If you are lucky enough to own a tunnel or greenhouse where you have successfully harvested tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, melons, cucumbers, etc., and I could go on, know that under this same tunnel, under this same greenhouse, you can grow in winter. When I mention winter, I think of harvest, but to harvest in winter, in January and February, one must sow and transplant in the fall. It is a time when you can still hear the lawnmowers and see farmers sowing green fertilizers. Well, under cover, we can especially bring back biodiversity, bring back life by sowing, transplanting and watering under this greenhouse. Once we have harvested our summer vegetables, it is essential to prepare the soil. We will sift it, rake it and hoe it if possible. It should be as fine as possible. We will add fertilizer. It is important to remember that all these plants have depleted the soil and we will especially need to water. Watering is important because it will allow all the seeds, both good and bad, to germinate. We are going to practice false sowing, which will make weeding easier for us later. In this part of the bed, the false sowing was done more than a week ago, about 10 days, and we can already see lettuce plants and etu plants emerging inside. There are even beans, there are peas, and there are even tomatoes inside. These are tomatoes that have been pulled out while the others continue to ripen. So we will select all these plants. If we can, why not transplant them or leave them in place? And I will take advantage of this free space to transplant escarole chicory from outside, sow lamb's lettuce, radishes and spinach. Sowing is valid when you remove the seedlings. So here I simply use a rake. I carefully rake in the process. All the little seedlings that sprout on my bed will have their roots exposed to the sun for 1 day, 2 days in the sun. They will all disappear and I will finally be able to transplant and sow my escarole chicories. These escarole chicories were sown in July in rows in a garden. Now they are going to be brought inside. They are already quite large. Generally speaking, a general rule when transplanting escarole chicories is to cut the tips of the roots. Additionally, the leaves should be reduced by at least a good half. Escarole chicories are transplanted every 30 centimeters. Use a measuring stick with markers every 30 centimeters. A golden rule for transplanting escarole chicories is that the root must always be straight. So it is better to use a dibber and carefully insert the root into the hole, gently packing around the root. To optimize the space, I create furrows between the rows of escarole chicories to sow radishes, which I will harvest before the lettuce. And to finish, we water the escarole chicories and radishes generously with a fine spray. You will even need to repeat this watering several times, and during the winter there will be almost no need for watering. And if it gets very, very cold this winter, we cover the escarole chicories with a wintering veil, which will allow us to consume escarole chicories in January and February, as well as radishes. On the other side of the tunnel, where there are tomatoes that are still ripening, as soon as they are finished, I will pull them out and replace them in the soil after working the soil with the green fertilizer. Thus, life continues under cover.